Yeah, welcome back to another episode here. I got another question I want to ask Bill. If there's a property that you're gonna potentially, as Lucas and you were talking about a couple weeks ago, Lucas or you guys are gonna flip, say a 40 and put it into an 80,
Yeah.
and you potentially want to sell it eventually down the road. It might not be the forever farm.
Right.
What are things that, in your opinion, that are best to keep track of for a realtor to provide to buyers in the future?
Yeah. Well, I think, anything that's going to create value to the next buyer is worth documenting somehow. And obviously the hunting history, if it's going to be a hunting property, whether it's waterfowl or whitetails. I mean, obviously I understand the deer market better, but
Right.
Having a list of, or a catalog of photos,
Yeah,
bucks that have been
absolutely.
killed there.
Right, harvest photos.
Yeah, and then also the trail camera pictures, because people love to buy properties that have a history, a track record.
Absolutely.
I can prove it's in a good neighborhood. Look,
Yeah.
it's one thing you show up and you say, gosh, is this neighborhood good? I really don't know. And the realtor always says, well, yeah, we think it is. It's like, they're not going to say,
Right.
well, no, or I don't know. I mean,
Yep.
so it's always going to be assumed that it's good. Well, that kind of leaves that question in your mind, is it really good? Well, if you got the photos to prove it, then
Right.
that really takes some of that risk away
Proof
for
in
the
the pudding
buyer.
then. Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So anytime you can take risk away from the buyer side,
Yeah.
it's worth more.
Yeah, it adds value, no
Yep.
doubt.
So then the other thing I think that adds value is just your track record of the improvements that you've made on the property. Like, okay, I bought this 5 years ago and I didn't just sit on my hands for 5 years and shoot deer.
Absolutely.
I made it better.
Yep.
So I saved you 5 years,
Yep.
as the next buyer.
Time's worth a lot of money.
Yeah. So what is it that you did? Document that. Maybe even take pictures like before, after pictures, ideally videos, anything that you can present to the next guy to show that, hey, I've made this property better. I've moved it, forward. Because he may look at it and resent the fact that you bought the 40 for $4,000 an acre. Now you're trying to get, $7,000 for it. He's going to go, I'm going to offer him 5,
Yeah,
or whatever,
right. But if he sees that you've put the work in,
Yeah.
you've cared for it like he wants to when he gets it,
Yeah.
it means more and it adds value. No
and you've
doubt.
moved him down the
Right.
road.
Yep.
So
For sure.
I think that's super important too, because it creates not only just more value for him, but something else that you can talk about.
Yeah,
It's really like
absolutely.
the story of this property.
Yep.
And he becomes maybe emotionally attached to the story as much as he is to
The actual piece of land.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. So let's look at the other side. I mean, again, I've said it before, but I don't really know a whole lot about buying or selling tillable land.
Yeah.
So what makes it important, or what would be something valuable for the seller to do on the tillable side?
Same type of thing. Just keep track of the things that you've done. If it's
Mm-hmm.
a wetter farm or it needs tile projects or anything along the lines of preventing erosion, any negatives, you want to pull them away and, present, obviously, as a seller, if you want, say you buy a 120 and it's too far away from your operation, but it's kind of a stepping stone to hopefully a farm closer, keep track of those yield maps, the fertility maps, all of that, that if you're hauling manure on it, fixing up waterways, clearing out tree lines, you name
Yeah.
it. Keep track of all that stuff. Tile, if they've done good, put a lot of tile projects into it, that's a lot, adding a lot of value, and that the same thing. It takes away any concern that the buyer will have, and they have a lot more confidence. If you have a good realtor, that's going to portray through the marketing,
Yeah.
and then the buyer has a lot more confidence in what they're buying. They know what they're going to buy.
So, we've talked about risk avoidance for the buyer, because as the risk goes away, his comfort level goes higher and his ability to say, okay, I'll spend more goes higher.
Absolutely.
What are some of the risk factors for a buyer on tillable? I mean, what are some of the things that a guy coming into it, I understand the rec side again, but
Right.
let's say you got a bunch of corn right behind me here.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm coming in to buy this field. It's got corn sitting on it. I really can't tell that much about it. It's like, what are my risks, and what would you do as a seller to eliminate those?
Yeah. So the risks on some of this hilly ground is if the waterways aren't maintained, if say somebody would come in and chop the farm and not plant a cover crop throughout the winter,
Yeah.
that's just going to create ditches, and it takes a good 5 years to fix that field up and get it back to the way they want it.
Yeah.
And so to avoid risk for sellers, it's just basically maintain the farm even if you're renting it, take care of it if it's your own, because it's going to create value for that landlord that you're renting from in the future.
So the CSR values, when are they recorded? Are they every year? I mean, how often are they come up with a number there?
Right.
Is that just based on the soil type, or is that based on
strictly on
actual?
the soil type. So,
So
if
you
you haul
could-
manure on it, it doesn't change the number.
That's right.
If it grows better corn because you're taking care of it and farming
Yeah.
it right, that doesn't change that number.
So the
It's
CSR
only the soil quality.
So the CSR isn't necessarily a true reflection of how productive the ground is.
Right.
It's like a baseline or a starting point.
Absolutely, and then it could go down, baseline, because it could go down if you're not maintaining and taking care of the fertility and the soil, and it could go up if you're improving it.
So that's why it's super critical as a seller of tillable to really get that stuff nailed down.
Absolutely.
Because you want to get credit for all the good stuff you did.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And also then in turn it grows a better crop and you're making more money.
Yeah. So the yield history really is almost more important than the CSR number when it comes right down to it.
Yeah. That's 100%.
Yeah.
So if you keep track of those yield maps, yield history on whatever farm that you may want to sell, if it's a long-term farm, even for bookworking, it's nice to just know what the yields are and what year to year it's producing.
Yeah, because I even know some of the areas up where I grew up, there's the river bottoms. And people are always like, ooh, hands off, because they assume that they're going to flood or they're too sandy or they're whatever.
Absolutely.
But you could offset that by just having better documentation of what the place has really done.
Right. Does it, like in that situation, does it flood one every 5 years, one every 10 years on average over the last 30 years or whatever time period you wanted to go on?
Yeah, that's interesting. Good. Anything else you can think of about that? I mean, I feel like avoiding risk as a buyer.
Yeah, I just think
I don't want risk, right?
Right.
So anything you can do as a seller or an agent to allay that sense of risk is just going to make the sale easier and probably more profitable for the seller.
Absolutely, yeah. The more confident a buyer is and they know what they're buying, they're willing to spend more because they know there's no unknowns at that point.
Yeah, so that's really good information. We appreciate you joining us. Now, I think we said we have one more we're going to talk about, right?
One more, yeah. That's right.
One might lead to two, and who knows from there. But yeah, keep checking back, and we'll keep bringing them to you.